Welcome to another NFL divisional preview. Today we have the AFC East, and I am filming this more than a week ahead of time, so if there's been anything that changed significantly for any of these teams, I apologize for not having it in. I'm going on vacation a little before the season starts, and so we're doing it a bit ahead of time. And hopefully nothing really changes. But before we get into the video, I wanted to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. It really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel, as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Tuesday and Friday for the remainder of the offseason, and then Thursday and Saturday once the NFL regular season starts. Now, let's get back to the video. So we're going to start off the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills, and last year the Buffalo Bills managed to win the division in spite midway through the season looking like they weren't even going to make the playoffs for a period, given how weak their start of the season was. They did finish 11-6. They managed to get the 2 seed, which how on earth did they get the 2 seed with the fact that they were barely in the playoff race, I think through like 8-9 weeks of the season? Either way, the Bills pulled it off, and what was their reward for pulling it off? Well, they lost in the playoffs again to the Chiefs and jettisoned a huge portion of their roster during the offseason. Now, for most teams, another playoff loss at the hand of the Chiefs and losing a significant portion of your top-end roster talent during the offseason would be a recipe for a disaster, and you would expect them to get significantly worse. But honestly, I'm still pretty bullish on the Buffalo Bills. Pun intended. The Buffalo Bills still have Josh Allen in-house, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I know some people might point to the number of turnovers he has, but you have to look at a lot of those turnovers in context and realize that a lot of them were arm punts on 3rd and 4th and long. A lot of them were just really incredible pickoffs that teams had on him. And the fact is, Josh Allen is the type of QB that is going to throw some picks, quite similar to Brett Favre back in the day. Nobody is debating Brett Favre's greatness as a quarterback. As a person, yeah, we can debate his greatness. We can just debate his reasonable decency in general. But as a quarterback, we all know Brett Favre was great, even though he threw a ton of picks, because that's just the style of game he played. And Josh Allen plays that same style of game while also being able to run the ball significantly better than Favre was ever able to do. And while a lot of people might point out the loss of Stephon Diggs in the offseason as a reason why the offense and especially Josh Allen will regress in 2024, what you have to remember is that Josh Allen in the second half of last year, after the offensive coordinator switched mid-season, Stephon Diggs wasn't that impactful in the offense. He was more of a distraction to the offense than he was a significant part of it. Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and James Cook were oftentimes the primary targets and primary options for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense. Stephon Diggs, I don't believe, had any 100-yard games in the second half of last season. And if he did, it was probably only one. And I think most of them he hit the under on his over-under receiving yards. And yet, in spite Stephon Diggs not putting up massive stats in those games, that's when the Bills went on their awesome win streak, which led them to getting the 2nd seed in the AFC, in spite where they were midway through the season. And so I don't think the loss of Stephon Diggs is that significant. And yes, they have lost a few other guys like their center, Mitch Morse, like a couple of their safeties in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. But they're also adding some guys back to this team. They're adding a guy like Sonny Milano, who is one of the best linebackers in the league, who missed a significant portion of last year. They added Rasul Douglas midway through the season last year, and he was absolutely a stud at cornerback and will be there for the entirety of the season in 2024. Beyond that, I don't know how effective Von Miller will be in 2024, but I got to imagine he can't be any worse than, I think, 3 total tackles, including assist tackles, in 2023. And if he has any type of bounce back, that's going to be a significant boon to this defense as well. And a lot of people are making a lot of noise about how the Buffalo Bills traded down with the Chiefs and then again with the Carolina Panthers, and that the Chiefs ended up taking Xavier Worthy and the Panthers ended up taking Xavier Legette, 2 wide receivers, when the Bills eventually did draft a wide receiver, a position we all knew they needed, at the top of the 2nd round with Keon Coleman. But I'll be honest, if you watch any of my pre-draft videos, I was super high on Keon Coleman. I really like Keon Coleman as an asset, and all signs point to him being extremely effective in Bills camp. And let me be clear, look at those videos back in the day, because this is before we all realized how amazing a person Keon Coleman was. I still was high on him because his biggest detractor is his speed. But guess what? There's guys like Devontae Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown who aren't the fastest guys in the NFL, but are still some of the best receivers in the NFL because they run good routes. And that's what Keon Coleman does. So I think he's going to be a great addition along with Dawson Knox, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, James Cook. They still have a decent receiving core. They still have Josh Allen. I think the defense will have a lot of pieces that are going to be very good for them in 2024. And my prediction for the Bills is that they actually improve their record to 12-5. Again, this might sound crazy, but if they play anywhere close to like they did in the second half of 2024, when frankly they were already decimated by injuries, then this team could absolutely go 12-5 in 2024, and I expect them to. And so you might call this a bit of homerism, and it is to an extent because I do like the Bills. They're my second favorite team outside of the Lions, but I really do think this is totally plausible for the Bills, which is why I project it. Our second AFC East team is the Miami Dolphins, and the Miami Dolphins did what the Miami Dolphins do in 2023. They made it to the playoffs. They finished 11-6, same as the Bills, but they didn't win the division thanks to the tie breaks, and they ended up matching up against the Kansas City Chiefs and lost in the first round of the playoffs. After we all were saying they were going to be the best team in the NFL, they put up 70 points in a game. Everyone was on the Dolphins bandwagon, myself excluded. I was never really on the Dolphins bandwagon. And I think the problem with the Dolphins in 2023 is going to continue into 2024. While yes, they have some fantastic skill position players, somehow Tyreek Hill was named the #1 player in the NFL in the NFL's top 100. I think that was a little overrated, but I definitely thought he was going to be a top 10 player either way. And along with Hill, you have Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle. Tua is a more than serviceable starting quarterback, and you got some really nice pieces on the defense too. The problem is the Dolphins pay a lot of money to a very low number of players, and I don't know how effective a lot of those players are. Yes, we only got partial season from Jalen Ramsey last year, but with the money Jalen Ramsey is making, I don't know if he's totally worth that anymore. But the Dolphins still kind of got to pay it because they got to see if he is the guy they traded for. Along with that, Tyreek Hill isn't getting any younger, and Tua lost one of his best offensive linemen from last year in Robert Hunt, and Christian Wilkins also left in free agency, who was one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL in 2023. Now, don't mistake what I'm saying. The Dolphins are still a good team. They should absolutely still be at the very minimum competing for a playoff spot in 2024, and I do expect them to make the playoffs in 2024 in a stacked AFC at that, which means I still think they are one of the better teams in the NFL. I just don't think they are the team that we saw at the beginning of last year when we all thought they were the best team in the NFL and a Super Bowl favorite. I think they are an underdog in the playoffs. I think they're likely to lose in the first round, similar to what they did in 2023. And let me be clear, that is more a comment on how many good teams there are in the AFC, such as the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bengals, etc., etc. And so I think the Dolphins ultimately are just going to be in the same position they were last year. I think their offense is still incredible and will still have some explosive games thanks to their ability in both the passing game and the running game and the speed they have all over the offense. But I don't think they're a team that can compete against other teams that can stop that type of offense. And their defense is not good enough to let them compete in a low-scoring contest. And so my ultimate prediction for the Dolphins is 10-7, one more loss than they had in 2023. Now, 10-7 is absolutely good enough to compete for the AFC playoff race. It's going to be tough given how many good teams there are in the AFC, but still more than good enough to be in competition with some of the top teams in the AFC. And to be clear, if Tua were to take the next step and become a clear top 10 quarterback in the NFL, this record could absolutely go up because of the level of talent they have on their roster and because of the level of coaching they have on this team. Let me be clear, outside of quarterback, I would probably take the Dolphins roster over the Bills roster. But I do think that Josh Allen is a certifiable top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and I'm not convinced Tua is even a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And with how important a position quarterback is, that's really the difference between the Bills and the Dolphins in terms of where they finish in the AFC in 2024. Our third AFC East team is the New York Jets. And the New York Jets had a little bit of a lost season in 2023 after Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles only 4 snaps into the 2023 NFL season. And he's going to be playing on Monday night again to start the season in 2024 and on turf. So sorry, Jets fans. Also, side note, I'm just noticing that this New York Jets AI generated photo has New York Jet, which maybe they're just saying the entire team is Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. Either way, I just noticed that, found it funny. Let's get back to talking about the Jets, because the Jets still have a very talented roster. Let's be clear. They still have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, who are absolutely elite offensive weapons. Aaron Rodgers, while he will be turning 40 this year, it is only a couple years removed from 2 straight MVP seasons and 13 win seasons with the Green Bay Packers. And their defense is still one of the best units, at least on paper, in the NFL. I don't think they were close to as dominant in 2023 as they were in 2022, but they were still a very good unit in 2023 and still could be a very good unit in 2024. And a lot of Jets fans will argue that the unit just didn't feel like trying because of what the offense was putting up on a week in, week out basis behind Zach Wilson. Yeah, maybe in 2022 you thought maybe Zach Wilson can figure it out, but in 2023, everybody knew they were done with Zach Wilson until they kind of couldn't be, and it just felt like the team wasn't able to rally behind him. So maybe that's why the defense wasn't as good in 2023, and they will be just as good in 2024. That's totally possible. And so a bullish interpretation of the Jets is that they could absolutely compete for a playoff spot and compete for a division title with the Bills and Dolphins. But I'll acknowledge I am not that bullish on the New York Jets. I was actually not bullish on them in 2023. I didn't have them making the playoffs in 2023, and I also don't in 2024. To be clear, I absolutely think the Jets have some great building blocks to build around for their franchise moving forward. However, I don't think Aaron Rodgers patches over every hole this team has. Let's be clear, pretty much every year Aaron Rodgers was with the Green Bay Packers, they had a very good offensive line that he was behind. And so he was able to have time in the pocket, read the progressions, and hit his receivers. However, the New York Jets don't totally have that offensive line in place. In 2022 and 2023, it was one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Yes, Zach Wilson probably wouldn't have been a good quarterback if he had a good offensive line or if he didn't have a good offensive line. But the fact of the matter is that this team didn't have a good offensive line in those years, and I'm not totally convinced they'll have a great offensive line in 2024. While I acknowledge a lot of their offseason moves have been very good in terms of trying to shore up that weakness, they added Morgan Moses, they added Tyron Smith, they took a first-round offensive tackle in the draft. These are all fantastic moves to improve their offensive line. But remember, the Ravens were willing to move on from Moses, even though they were looking to compete. The Cowboys were willing to move on from Tyron Smith, who had been one of their best offensive linemen for the past decade, even though they are still looking to compete. And yes, while the Jets did draft a first-round tackle who could be very good, it's still unproven, and it's often very tough for a first-year tackle to be elite in year one because of how tough the position is. And so there is absolutely a world where this offensive line improves, where Aaron Rodgers is able to get to his MVP form, and this team is elite. But there's also a world where Aaron Rodgers plays much more similarly to how he did in his final year in Green Bay, where the team finished 8-9 and missed the playoffs. And then the following season last year with Jordan Love were significantly better, even though the roster looked worse. And also, I think it's more likely that the offensive line is mediocre at best than that it's completely revamped and very good. And so the fact that I still have significant questions about quarterback and offensive line is why my prediction for the Jets is 8-9. It's still an improvement over last year, but it's not a winning record because they are in a very tough conference in the AFC. They are in a tough division with the Bills and Dolphins, and I'm just not sold on a bunch of these assets' ability to improve the team significantly like a lot of Jets fans are. I'm sorry, Jets fans, you might want to flack me, you might want to yell at me, but that's just my opinion. I do think this team in a few years could be very good if they find a good quarterback in the draft. I just don't think it's going to be with Rodgers. And our final AFC East team is the New England Patriots. And do I really need to talk about the New England Patriots? I mean, let's be clear. The Patriots are getting their just desserts. For a team that had so much success for pretty much my entire football watching life, I gotta say, it brings a little joy to my heart to watch the Patriots and their fans just suffer a little bit. I mean, if you're a Patriots fan, You know you need this. I'm a Lions fan. Trust me. Do this for another 40 years and we might be in the same ballpark. In 2023, the New England Patriots finished with a 4-13 record, good enough for the third worst record in the NFL, which allowed them to draft a first-round quarterback at third overall in Jayden Daniels, who is going to be the quarterback of the future for this team. Now, we obviously don't quite know yet if he's going to start week 1, but he absolutely could because the quarterbacks other than him on this roster are nothing to write home about. And to be honest, most of this roster in general is nothing to write home about. This team obviously used the draft capital this past year to take Jayden Daniels, which is obviously a good place to start getting a top-tier quarterback to rebuild your franchise. But there's a reason this team went 4-13 last year. It's because there are not many building blocks on this team to build around, and they actually lost a good number of top-tier players in free agency this past year. They lost a couple of offensive tackles who were quite effective for them in 2023, and they didn't really replace those guys that effectively in the offseason. Now, they are talking about a Brandon Ayuk trade, though that sounds like it's not going to happen between the Patriots and the 49ers because Ayuk just doesn't want to go to the Patriots. But it does show the Patriots may make a move to improve this team and to help Jayden Daniels out because the receiver room in New England is pretty freaking bare. But if they're unable to do that, the defense is a little bit uninspiring. We don't know how good it's going to be without Bill Belichick because, again, it was actually a very effective unit in spite of the lack of star power in 2023. The problem was the offense was just anemic, and we have the big question mark as to how much did Bill Belichick impact that defense's success and how much can Gerard Mayo replicate that in 2024? And so with significant questions on the offense, even compared to last year, and significant questions on the defense, even compared to last year, where this team finished 4-13, my prediction for this team is that they fall to 2-15. Same record as I projected for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know which one of these teams is going to be worse in 2024, but let me be clear, I don't think either of these teams are going to be good. Now, there is a world where Gerard Mayo is a very effective coach, can get a bit of motivation out of the guys when maybe the Bill Belichick audience was just not working anymore, and that Jayden Daniels is an absolute stud and this team is a 500 team. That is plausible, but I just don't think it's very likely. I think the more likely outcome is even if Jayden Daniels is quite good, that this team just has some growing pains. And that's going to happen. And Patriots fans, I don't feel that sorry for you. And so here's what I have the final division standings looking like. Let's be clear, it's not that close of a division. Basically, come the final week of the regular season, when divisional teams play divisional teams, it won't matter for this division if these records come to fruition because there's at least 2 games separating every team from each other. This is the exact same standings as the division had in 2023, and I just think that was the accurate standing for the teams, and I don't think enough changed in the offseason to make me change my opinion on those standings. The Bills will win the division and be in competition for the number 1 seed in the AFC. The Dolphins probably end up in one of the 6th or 7th wildcard seeds. Based on what I have in the AFC North, it would be the 7th wildcard seed, but they could absolutely compete for the 6th wildcard. And the Jets will miss the playoffs, and Jets fans will riot because they didn't win, and Robert Saleh's head will absolutely roll, which frankly it probably should have already. And the Patriots will be competing for the first overall pick, and I guess maybe Travis Hunter's in their future. But that's it for the AFC East video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to leave a like and comment down below. Help us out, help us grow. Reminder again that starting after we finish these divisional previews, we will be moving to a Thursday and Saturday release schedule for the duration of the NFL regular season. Either way, I'll see you all next time. Peace!